Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. Really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. It's late, I know, but I've been up researching this case of the person accused of attempting to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And there's been all sorts of headlines about the 8-year sentence for the person and whether that was fair or not. And you guys, if you follow me, you know I'm not going to give my opinion about whether I think it's fair, but it got me very curious about the actual case, the facts of the case, what happened, because you never really see anyone going deep. Everybody's just sort of outraged one way or the other. So in this episode, I'm going to go over everything that I've been able to find about this case of the person who attempted to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and what led to that 8-year sentence. All of it in this episode of Brian Entin Investigates. Hey guys, okay, so here we go. I'm going to dig into the case here of Nicholas Roske. I've been going over everything. Sorry, the lighting's a little funky, but I'm in my car. He's obviously charged with attempting to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. So this is kind of important for when I go through all of this because the pronouns may change a little bit. Roske was transitioning from male to female, so he went by the name Sophie Roske. However, Roske was charged by his birth name, Nicholas Roske, and that is the name that I'm going to use to discuss the story. But I'm going to be going back and forth and reading you sections from what the defense has said and what the prosecution has said, and so sometimes the defense, some of the documents I'm reading refer to Nicholas Roske as a she. So if I go into she mode, it's because it's a defense filing, just in case it gets confusing with the pronouns. So Roske pleaded guilty in April, put my glasses on, to the attempted assassination of Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, turned himself in outside the judge's home, telling authorities that he was suicidal and had planned to kill the judge. Attorney General Pam Bondi, if you've been following this, has now claimed that the sentence of 8 years, which is what he got, 8 years, is far too short. She says that the government is going to appeal the sentence, and Ross's sentence comes, as we all know, amid political violence in America. I mean, it's been crazy the last month with the shootings that I've covered, the murders in the church in Minneapolis, which was terrible with the kids inside that Catholic church. We had the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I was in Utah for that. The 2 shootings that resulted in fatalities in both South Carolina. The murder of the Mormons worshiping in a Michigan church. So there's been a lot of violence that has to do with politics lately. And really the truth is what happened to Justice Kavanaugh is really what seems to be an epidemic in our country. It's happening to both private individuals worshiping together, also public individuals. So I'm going to focus on this latest tragedy, ended without the murder of Justice Kavanaugh, obviously, but we're going to discuss the controversial sentences the judge handed down to Roske, and I'm going to outline all the key facts of the case. Some have not been widely reported, so I'm going to try to get into everything that I could find here. And again, the purpose of this is because I was thinking today, there's so many tweets about this, but I was like, what actually happened? I didn't even know. I mean, and I'm pretty up on the news. I only knew the bullet points. So I wanted to actually dive into the case of what really happened. So as I said, the trans woman who attempted to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh, Sophie Roske, lived in California and was in the process of transitioning from a man, Nicholas Roske, to a woman, according to court documents. The government's memo in aid of sentencing set forth the facts that the government alleged in its case against Nicholas Roske. And that's what I'm going to go through. The document, which was written and submitted by United States Attorney Kelly O'Hayes, alleged that the defendant had stated that she wanted to assassinate 3 sitting Supreme Court justices, but attempted to assassinate only one, Judge Kavanaugh. So let me read for you here what the government claimed Roske did prior to arriving in Washington. He traveled from Washington from Los Angeles. So they say, in the spring of 2022, Roske meticulously researched, planned, and attempted to assassinate at least one, but had a stated target of 3 sitting judges on the United States Supreme Court. They allege that the defendant's explicit objective was to single-handedly alter the constitutional order for ideological ends. Those plans mercifully were disrupted upon the defendant's arrival at the first Associate Justice's residence due to the presence of a protective security detail, and the defendant was arrested at that location. The defendant's own words show that the defendant was shooting for 3 assassinations. And this is the evidence that they presented against Roske. A map saved in the defendant's Google account contained location pins marking what the defendant believed to be the residential addresses of 4 sitting Supreme Court justices. In the month leading up to June 8th, 2022, the defendant conducted internet searches for the homes of these 4 justices, including images. In the 2 weeks before June 8th, 2022, the defendant purchased a Glock 17 pistol, ammunition, a rail-mounted tactical light with laser sight, tactical gloves, non-slip grip socks, cable ties, pepper spray, a lock pick set, a screwdriver, and a wrecking bar. 2 days before June 8th, 2022, the defendant searched Windows How to Wipe Down a Drive and submitted a request to delete permanently the defendant's Discord account, where the defendant had made statements such as, "People have killed judges before." Discord, remember Discord came into play with the Charlie Kirk assassination too, and I'm going to get more into Discord in a second. On June 6, 2022, Roske attempted to fly from Los Angeles to Washington Dulles Airport, but arrived at the airport too late to check a bag. But since she couldn't check her bag, the government alleged that she rescheduled her flight for the next day. On June 8th, 2022, Roske made the cross-country flight from Los Angeles to Washington. Upon arriving at Washington Dulles Airport, he took a taxi to Justice Kavanaugh's address in Montgomery County, Maryland. He got there around 1:06 a.m. What happened next is Roske brought a suitcase containing the purchased Glock 17 pistol, 2 loaded magazines, and additional ammunition, a chest rig, which is basically a harness to carry tactical gear, a knife, lockpicks, a hammer, screwdriver, nail punch, crowbar, duct tape, hiking boots with padding affixed to the bottom of the soles, and pepper spray. Okay, so now is where the defendant's story and the government's allegations part ways substantially. So I'm going to go through what each side says happened here. The government says 2 deputy marshals who were guarding the Associate Justice's residence, Brett Kavanaugh's residence, from separate vehicles stationed outside the residence saw the taxi arrive and stop in the street directly in front of the residence and watched the defendant get out of the taxi and retrieve a suitcase from the trunk. One of the deputy United States Marshals was positioned to be able to get out of her car, cracking open her car door and illuminating the interior of her vehicle. Upon seeing law enforcement's presence, the defendant decided to walk past the front of the house and directly past the deputy United States Marshal. In the defendant's own words, "I noticed immediately that there were people sitting outside, and this was a very empty neighborhood. So I was like, okay, they're keeping a lookout." The government argued it was only after this point, after observing a visible law enforcement presence protecting the residents, that the defendant walked past the Associate Justice's home, received a phone call from the defendant's sister, and after speaking for approximately 20 minutes, called 911. So basically, the government alleged in the sentencing memo that the defendant was about to go up to the Kavanaugh residence with her suitcase, but after seeing the marshals, then basically retreated. And then the defendant got a phone call from her sister, spoke to her for about 20 minutes, and then called 911, which is when she turned herself into authorities. So the government goes on to state, and I'm going to read from this, that the attempted assassination of a justice of the United States Supreme Court required extensive premeditation, and that Roske researched, planned, procured the tools for the planned killings. You heard me read that long list. Traveling across the entirety of the United States, from LA to Washington. The defendant's criminal conduct, the attempted assassination of a justice of the United States, required extensive premeditation. The defendant researched, planned, procured the tools for the planned killings, traveled across the entirety of the country, had a gun, attempted to delete online evidence of motive and intent. The defendant's objective to target and kill judges to seek to alter a court's ruling is an abhorrent form of terrorism and strikes at the core of the United States Constitution and our prescribed system of government. The government's sentencing memo also cited a Discord message in which Roske wrote, "I am shooting for 3. Again, this is something that I didn't know. I didn't know that there was more than 1 initially that he wanted to kill. And again, I'm sorry about the pronouns. Some of the documents that I have seem to say she and some say he. "I'm shooting for 3, indicating he had considered targeting additional justices beyond Kavanaugh. The government sought the following sentence of 30 years. So the government wanted 30 years with lifetime supervision. The defendant's sentencing guidelines range accurately reflects the severity of the crime and its recommended range of imprisonment of 30 years to life. Government wanted 30 years to life. For the same reason, and as explained further in this memo, the government submits that a guideline sentence of no fewer than 30 years to life, followed by lifetime supervised release, is the necessary and just sentence in this case, given all the aggravating and other factors to be considered. So we now know that the defendant got 8 years, government wanted 30, and I'm going to get to the defendant side of things in a second. In terms of Discord, remember, Discord was a site that the Charlie Kirk alleged assassin was on. Discord is a site that this defendant was also on. State of Utah, so back to Charlie Kirk, I had written this down. The state of Utah claims he was allegedly radicalized by leftist ideology involving Discord. But with Nicholas Roske, the alleged attempted Brett Kavanaugh assassin, says on March 18th, 2022, the defendant on Discord told another Discord user, "My mental health is too poor for me to fear death, but prison sounds worse, to be monitored to the point where you can't even kill yourself. So if I did kill someone, I would definitely try to get away with it." I wrote that on Discord. In April 2022, Ross's Google accounts repeatedly searched for shooting videos, including school shooting videos, and for mass shootings or mass shooters. Roske also searched firearms-related terms, including 18 times, including buy guns online, gun store, where to find serial numbers on guns. Roske also posted on Reddit which person's death would have the biggest impact on the world. In May, when a leaked draft majority opinion showing that the court was about to overturn Roe v. Wade, Roske searched it on his computer. He then spent the next 2 weeks searching terms relating to combat and body armor. He searched those things at least 28 times. Within a month, he had searched firearms-related terms over 90 times. These are examples of some of his searches. Quietest semi-auto rifle, gun calibers, best silencers for Glock 17. Can you bring a gun in your luggage? How long does it take for cops to respond to shots fired? 22 laser sight. Most important attachments for pistols. How far are 9mm accurate? Homemade silencers. Other searches included, do snipers aim for the head or chest? Best caliber for 200 yards. Scope magnification for 200 yards. Does the Secret Service protect Supreme Court justices? Do you have to account for wind at 200 yards? In the month leading up to June 8th, Roske conducted online research into breaking into a residence, burglary tools, and ways to avoid detection. And those searches included easiest way to open a locked door, how to break glass quietly, how to remain undetectable, most reliable way to pick locks, best way to break into a house, how to make shoes quieter, how to make handcuffs with zip ties. And the searches continue. Searching guns and shooting, body armor, breaking and entering, methods to silent and avoid detection. In the month leading up to June 8th, Roske searched Supreme Court and general searches about its cases 12 times. Searched the Associate Justice, Brett Kavanaugh, extensively 27 times. Researches I guess there were two justices that he was specifically searching 16 times. Searched Justice's home, was looking for the address apparently. And then there were more online statements made by Roske on Discord. I'm going to read you some of those. This is what he allegedly wrote. Would Kavanaugh being removed from the South Carolina help women long term? I'm sorry, South Carolina. God, I'm so tired. I had put SC for the abbreviation. Would Kavanaugh being removed from the Supreme Court help women long term? I was thinking of the Roe decision. I feel like those 9 people make a much bigger impact than most people. What do you think would happen if Kavanaugh died? And these are things that he wrote on Discord. Also, the right have a 5-4 majority, so if one conservative justice dies, then it becomes 5-4 for the left. If a conservative judge were replaced by a liberal judge, thus changing which party has the majority, what would change? The thought of Roe v. Wade and gay marriage both being repealed has me furious. On May 27, 2022, Roske messaged a different user on Discord stating an intent to remove multiple Supreme Court justices through murder. In response to the question, what you trying to do, Roske stated, remove some people from the Supreme Court. Yeah, but I could at least get one, which would change the votes for decades to come, and I'm shooting for 3. And I didn't realize that there were initially 3 involved. And I always said it once before, but it's like you read beneath the headlines here. People have killed judges before. This intent from multiple killings can be seen. So according to the government, Roske's intent to kill as Supreme Court justice goes back as far as January 2022. There were more evidence in his searched online for websites for mass shootings. In 2021, even back to 2021, Roske also visited websites for how are mass murderers treated in prison and games where you play as a serial killer and try to get away with murder. In March 2022, Roske searched for serial killers Donald Henry Gaskins and Peter Sutcliffe. Roske searches for killing included 4 videos of mass shootings, such as shootings. Roske also searched for video from specific mass shooting events, such as Sutherland Springs, Texas. And so, I mean, there were all sorts of searches here. I'm not even going to read through them all. So how to quietly knock someone out, how far into the neck is the trachea, how far into the neck is the throat, what is the best length of knife for stabbing, how much force do you need to stab someone's neck, carotid artery, most effective way to silently kill someone, does twisting or dragging a knife cause more damage, neck injury with highest mortality rate. Wow. And then on June 4th, 2022, Roske visited and viewed over 30 websites showing head and neck anatomy and graphics depicting knives in the body, especially in the neck. Some of these websites had graphic photographs of neck wounds, and some showed a knife lodged in a person's neck. Roske also researched serial killers and murderers who were careful not to leave evidence, posting on Reddit which serial killer was the most careful. By most careful, I mean planned things out, very conscious of leaving evidence, purposefully trying to avoid having a pattern, etc. I'm trying to write a killer who is very methodical, calm, patient, etc., not theatrical but practical. I was curious what length someone like that would go to in order to avoid leaving evidence. Simultaneous to Roske's online research of specific targets, ways to kill someone, and ways to do so without leaving evidence, Roske purchased tools to carry out the plan. This included a Glock 17 at a gun store in California, a rail-mounted tactical light. A lot of this is already listed in the previous document. Cable ties, pry bar, screwdriver, 34-piece lock, pick set. He researched also into how to evade prosecution by fleeing to a foreign country and did not have an extradition agreement that we don't have an extradition agreement with. This is other things that he searched. Countries that don't extradite to the U.S. Does Iceland extradite to the U.S.? Does Sweden extradite to the U.S.? How to get a passport in California. Countries least likely to extradite to the U.S. So then, June 2022, Roske had conducted extensive research and obtained the items needed to carry out the planned assassinations. June 3rd, 2022, Roske visited a shooting range to practice pistol shooting. Same day, Roske conducted multiple online searches showing full awareness of what may occur after the crime, including insanity defense, by reason of insanity, what happens if you are suicidal in prison, if you are hospitalized after a crime, what happens. Gives you an idea of the level of planning here. On the next day, on June 4th, 2022, the same day that Roske visited over 30 websites showing head and neck anatomy and graphics depicting knives in the neck, on June 6, 2022, Roske searched for Windows, how to wipe down a drive, as well as received an email from Discord confirming receipt of a request to delete the Discord account that Roske had been using to post and message the statements quoted above. So then he wanted to delete his Discord account. The defendant was apparently quite calm when he was arrested at the scene, and at all times after the arrest, Roske's demeanor was calm, responsive, not verbally or physically agitated, appeared to be resting on multiple occasions, which is kind of weird to think resting after all that. At the scene, an officer's car while being transported to the district station while in a holding cell. Apparently when they approached him in the interview room, he appeared to be resting. Told him that he takes medication every 12 hours. This is all in there too. Roske told the detective that after being dropped off by the taxi, this goes back now to what Roske says happened when he arrived at Justice Kavanaugh's house. So he told the detective that after being dropped off by the taxi, he noticed immediately that there were people sitting outside, and this was a very, empty neighborhood. I was like, okay, they're keeping a lookout. So then I went around the house on the other side. Soon after, Roske's sister called, and after that conversation, Roske called 911. So he talked to his sister, and then he called 911 on himself. And so this is going to be his account of what he says happened, and this comes into people who believe that he shouldn't have gotten as serious a sentence and agree with the 8 years. They're saying it's because ultimately he realized he was doing wrong and called 911 himself. And that's what this part gets into. He also called the detective that the burglary tools were purchased online. Told the detective that the burglary tools were purchased online. So he was admitting this, and that Roske conducted research for about a month for what he described as a project, I guess. He called it a project using the computer. In response to the detective asking what Roske planned to do with the duct tape, Roske stated, "Covering windows when I break them." And about plans for the zip ties, Roske stated, "in case I wanted to restrain someone." And then the interview concluded shortly after. At the defendant's initial appearance the same day, he confirmed that Roske has been taking medications prescribed by a doctor and had taken them that day. So this is what he says happened. 1:39 a.m., Montgomery County 911 dispatch received a call from a Nicholas Roske stating that he was having thoughts of harming himself or others. Mr. Roske stated he had flown from California with an unloaded firearm that was locked in a case and that the case was inside a zip-tied shut suitcase. He added that he had a backpack that did not contain any weapons. When asked if he needed medical attention, Mr. Roske stated he needed psychiatric help. Mr. Roske stated that he had other weapons with him, also inside the zip-tied suitcase, but none were in his possession. The dispatcher instructed Mr. Roske on how to act when the officers arrived, including by placing the suitcase and backpack away from where Mr. Roske made a very brief initial 911 call, hung up before providing any information, and called right back. He was standing and making sure he had nothing in his possession except his clothing and cell phone. At one point, Mr. Roske asked if he should move further away from his bags. So he surrendered, without doing anything. When the dispatcher said he should, Mr. Roske stated he had done so and moved about 20 yards away from the suitcase. While Mr. Roske sat on the curb waiting for emergency responders to arrive, he continued to answer all the dispatcher's questions. When the dispatcher asked, "Okay, and why were you coming to Justice Brett Kavanaugh's house? Just to hurt yourself and him, or what was going to be the plan?" Mr. Roske then responded, "Correct." As Mr. Roske stated he saw police coming, the dispatcher reminded him the importance of following the officer's commands. I mean, you can imagine at this point they know he's armed, and, if he made any sudden movements, obviously that would be a big issue. So they reminded him of following the officer's commands. Several Montgomery County police officers were dispatched to the area. Officer GD instructed Mr. Roske to put down his phone, stand up, and turn around. Mr. Roske did so. As officers approached, they could see that Mr. Roske had followed the dispatcher's instructions and moved away from his bags. Other information from defense on the crime, basing a case on a defendant's internet search, which included things that the defendant thought and did not do, is not a crime. So that was one of the notes I made. This is one of the defense's claims here. They were trying to prove that just because he searched some of this stuff didn't mean that he was actually going to do it. And in the end, he didn't end up doing it. He ended up calling 911 instead. The government's response details months of Roske's internet activity, including Google searches, communications on Discord, as I went through. They cataloged the entire internet history. Basically, we're like, look, we have all of the stuff. Googling, Discord, dark corners of the internet, they said. But the defense was claiming, well, dark corners of the internet does not equate to a criminal intent. A user's internet content is voluminous, intensely personal, and can easily be taken out of context, they said. In a case about a crime here, an attempt, it is especially important to distinguish that and now they go back to Miss Roske, because this is the defense writing, intended and took substantial steps to do from what she merely thought about during a period of severe depression, but never acted upon. So they're saying she was depressed, did this during a period of severe depression, but never acted on it. The former is a crime, one Miss Roske has accepted a responsibility for. The latter is not. But Miss Roske's conduct did not encompass an attempt to target multiple justices or efforts to evade capture or hide evidence. The court should sentence Miss Roske for what she did, not for what she thought about. The court should sentence Miss Roske for what she did, not for what she thought about. Miss Roske did not have a plan and did not attempt to target 3 justices or anyone else. The fact that Miss Roske conducted internet research into and messaged a friend about multiple justices is troubling, but the government's evidence does not support finding by a preponderance of the evidence that Miss Roske planned or attempted to target anyone other than the associate justice she had pleaded guilty to targeting. At most, the facts support a finding that at some point Ms. Roske had an idea of targeting more than one justice that did not result in action. So they keep saying there was no action here. The government cites months of Google searches, including searches for shootings and serial killers, to insinuate that Ms. Roske began researching a crime months before she committed it, but there is a limit to the relevance on one's internet search history, which can easily be taken out of context or assigned more meaning than it's worth. Ms. Roske's case is no exception to this. Ms. Ross's poor mental health condition, internet use, contributed to her deteriorating mental health, and they're trying to say the defense is she was mentally unwell and was never actually planning to commit the murder. Ms. Ross's depression was worsening significantly in 2021 and 2022, they say. Her family members and friends observed her withdrawal from people.
Weed, wine reduction sauce on a bed.
Sorry. I do not know what that was. I think my card is connected to someone else's Bluetooth or something. That was really weird. Her family member and friends observed her withdrawal from people and things she used to love as she increasingly spent more and more time online. Research has long established a bi-directional relationship between poor psychological well-being, including depression and loneliness, and problematic internet usage. People with depression and loneliness are susceptible to developing compulsive patterns of internet use. Compulsive internet use can negatively affect psychological well-being, they say. Additionally, neuroscience research has found that compulsive internet use interacts with the same parts of the brain as drugs and alcohol, resulting in dopamine hits that create addictive cycles. So they're sort of blaming it on the internet here. Zoe Wyatt, Wire for Want, how dopamatic are their... Sorry, this is them citing an article here. That very depression made him more susceptible to the gravitational pull of internet rabbit holes, they say. In the future, any concerning internet behavior will not go unnoticed, as Ms. Roske will be subject to a computer monitoring condition during her period of supervised release. Many of Ms. Ross's internet searches from May and June 2022 are indisputably relevant to this offense. Indeed, she informed the 911 dispatcher and investigators that she had done research and purchased supplies online in furtherance of her plan. So that Ms. Roske was looking for information about mass shootings does not mean she aspired to commit one, they say. Rather, it is consistent with someone who is concerned about the epidemic of gun violence in our country. So they're saying that she was maybe researching this because she was concerned about gun violence in our country. But, I mean, it's a lot of research there. Similarly, that she searched for information about serial killers does not mean she aspired to be one. Rather, it is consistent with someone who has partaken in the national obsession with true crime. The defense says the investigation's memos include only those search terms it deemed relevant to the offense conduct or otherwise nefarious. It does not include the many innocent terms that Ms. Roske searched for, such as movies, TV shows, video games, information relating to filing taxes, news stories, other random things. They say she took to involving harming anyone or herself. Thankfully, by the time her plan disintegrated, she was not even able to access her weapons to harm herself, let alone someone else, they say. Ms. Roske did not intend to attempt or escape. So there's, again, going back to like saying that nothing actually ended up happening. The government argues that Ms. Roske preemptively researched potential escapes and defenses by searching for terms like, does Iceland extradite to the U.S. in insanity defense? But again, they say the defense is saying that she never actually did anything. They say she called 911, reported her thoughts and intentions, revealed to police her location, what weapon she had, remained in place as police arrived to arrest her, and she freely admitted to investigators the details of her conduct, not because she was pursued by police or caught red-handed, but because she chose to abandon her plan. She chose to ask for help. Ms. Roske did not take a single step in furtherance of either escaping the country or invoking a defense. She did not have a passport or international travel plans. During her interview, she said nothing suggesting she was trying to invoke a defense or feigning insanity. She did not minimize or obfuscate her conduct in any way. And they're basically saying she voluntarily abandoned the plan. That's what they keep going back to. So that's why they claim she should have gotten less time, and she ended up getting less time. I mean, the judge obviously agreed with some of this because the prosecution asked for 30 years. She got 8 years. Mr. Roske Sentencing memorandum also explains while she was still in the taxi arriving in the justice's neighborhood, she realized she could not go through with her plan. The defense argued that even if the court credits the government's assertion that it was the presence of the deputy U.S. Marshal that caused Ms. Roske to change course and walk past the house, it is abundantly clear that the presence of the security detail did nothing to provoke Ms. Roske to call 911 30 minutes later from a nearby street. The security detail did not interact with Ms. Roske, let alone confront or pursue her. Nor did they alert other law enforcement to Ms. Ross's presence or initiate any sort of investigation. So they're basically saying she was going to call 911 on her own regardless, and that she didn't actually get caught, but she turned herself in, according to her defense. They say she has a history of self-disclosure when seeking treatment, and that she had been in her deepest states of depression beginning at the age of 19, talking a lot about her suicidal thoughts and violent thoughts, really going back to the mental illness. And again, saying that she backed out, called the police ultimately. Then it goes back to the defense basically saying that, look at the planning. They're saying, look at everything she did leading up to this. So she pleaded guilty last year, by the way, to attempting to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. And then the sentencing, as we all know, just happened, and she got 8 years. By the way, interesting, I was pulling these statistics today. Threats against federal judges more than doubled since 2021, according to U.S. Marshal Service data reviewed by Reuters. Some judges who have ruled against Trump administration policies have faced threats and harassment along with their families. That was according to the Reuters investigation. Also vice versa. Judges, really on both sides. People have, both sides of the political aisle. Roske was 26 when she was arrested and pleaded guilty. She was dismayed at expected Supreme Court opinions. Really, goes back to the politics of this all, and that she, wanted to change the trajectory of the Supreme Court, essentially, according to the prosecutors. She said, "I've been portrayed as a monster. This is a tragic mistake I made. It will follow with me for the rest of my life." Ross lawyers asked sentenced her to no more than 96 months because she had called 911 to surrender. So they wanted 96 months. Prosecution wanted 30 years. She ended up getting 8 years. So that's kind of the summary that I came up with it. There are a lot of court documents, but I wanted to just give you guys sort of I know I went through a lot of information fast, but I wanted to give you guys the lay of the land in this case, and I hope I did a decent job, just again, because I was frustrated over the last day, just seeing all of the just headlines about the sentence and not really understanding exactly what the defendant was accused of doing and what the arguments were on both sides. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Sorry if I was rambling, but I wanted to get this all out. And yeah, thank you guys for subscribing. I was just doing YouTube for a while, but now I got on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and iHeart audio versions too. So if you guys are on YouTube but you want to listen, you can check out those platforms too. And thank you guys for supporting me. I'm having a really great time with the podcast. I don't even know if you're supposed to call it a podcast anymore. It's just a show. But it's been really cool being able to dive into things. I obviously still work at News Nation. That's my day job. I love it there too. But being able to do this on my own and take the time to explain things, and just it's been really, really cool. So anyway, I hope you guys have a good one. See you guys. Bye.